Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It is the first Saturday of 2025. It is time. It has been a while. I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Welcome to the channel. I hope you all had a great holiday season, that you had a great new year. You are ready for some chatting and discussions and all of that stuff. I have a whole bunch of new books to talk about. Um, Bunch of books to get people excited about and to get things going in. Hello, Chad. Welcome in. Hope you are doing well. Everybody in chat, North Shore GM was a wonderful, wonderful fellow player in last night's game that I got to play in over on Shelley Von Miller's channel. Chad is also apparently part of Raven Writ Games and makes fun TPRPG stuff. Was a lot of fun. We got to play some D&D last night for charity. We raised $300. We made our goal. Yay. Also, I got to see a bunch of the stuff that Chad was making, and it looks so pretty. Just throwing that out there. Go give them a follow. I need to find the things. I have things. Where's the link thingy? I moved link thingies. I'll find it. Anyways, we had a lot of fun. We raised money for charity. Chad played our wonderful Kobold Paladin. There was indeed a moment of epicness wherein I, the Shatterkai cleric with a big pointy stick, lacrosse through our Kobold Paladin into a giant pile of wolves. It was great. Who wants a softball special when you can have a fastball special? When you can have a paladin on the paladin by a stick paladin. There you go. We'll figure out the words. But I put the Raven Writ Games link tree in chat. Go check it out. They're really good, fun people. Give them a follow. But tonight, why does that look weird? Okay, just me. Tonight we are talking about books. Kobold Crosslob. I like it. Good job, Hawkeye. But yeah, it's the Shatterkai cleric with a big pointy stick flung. That would be a bad case of lupus. Time. Cheers. That worked, everybody. But tonight we are here to talk about books because I like books. And I like to share my love of books, particularly the books I've read over the last week, with all of you fine folks. And most recently, I've been very, very lucky to get a few ARC copies of books over on NetGalley. For those of you who don't know, NetGalley is a online platform wherein you publishers find reviewers and individuals who wish to read ARC ebooks or audiobooks. They also have audiobooks of upcoming titles. And they're really kind of great. You just kind of like request books and you get approved or not approved depending on whatever the publisher thinks. But it did mean that I've gotten some very interesting books to read recently. And books to share with people because I like sharing my love of books with all of you. So, where should we start? I feel like we should start with the sci-fi book first, because then I have one sci-fi and two fantasy. So what's an ARC? An ARC is an abbreviation, it's an acronym, it stands for Advanced Reader Copy. You can get a lot of these from going, like I usually used to get them when I was living in Atlanta and I would go to Dragon Con every year. A bunch publishers will publish advanced reader copies, which are not the final version of a book. Usually there's a final edit or like a final print edit version that goes through. Hawkeye, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. A lot of publishers will just kind of give these away, and you know, they say if you review it, please tag us and let us know, because they can't ask for, you know, they can't give you free books in return for reviews, because that's seen as purchasing reviewers. But you know, and so it used to be that you would get physical copies and it would say all over it, ARC copy, not final version, art subject to change. And usually like it would be missing, you know, for fantasy novels it'd be missing, the maps wouldn't be finished or final art wouldn't be done. Maybe page numbers weren't set or whatever. And sometimes it was like people would send out at ARCs and you'd be like, you need to do a whole nother like print edit cut version on this because of where the page breaks were. It doesn't, like, the proof copy doesn't work, but it's a great way to read new stories and then hype up new authors or authors' new series or interesting works that are coming out. And NetGalley, it's free to join. Am I logged in? Oh good, I'm not logged in. It's a kind of like a clearinghouse, and you can get them in multiple languages, US, France, Germany, Japan, and UK. And they have a wide variety of books, and you just kind of like create a profile and say, hey, I would like to get advanced reader copies of this particular book. And if the publisher okays it, then you get an e-version of the book. And it usually, you get like or you can get an audiobook version for some of them if you request it. And it's like, usually it's like 2 to 3 months before publication date, like is the timeline you have to read them. So like 60 days, 55 days or something. But lots of fun things. Lots and lots of fun things. So first fun thing up, we should talk about, because I have 2 fantasy novels and one, which are both part of series, or tied to series, I should say. Not really part of, but tied to series that I've already talked about and love. And then one sci-fi book, which I'm going to tell you right now. Hey Pope, are you in chat? Pope, if you're in chat, just wave, because I have a thing for you. So first up, let us zoop over, and you are here. Good. Because I'm about to show you something that you will appreciate. The first book I want to talk about, we're gonna zoop over, and as you see, this is from bookshop.org. I've been trying really hard to buy. I understand Barnes & Noble is there. It's the biggest game in town, and aside from Amazon, it's probably the most, like, if you can't get Amazon, there's Barnes & Noble, but I'm also trying to really this year support bookshop.org a lot, and encourage people to use that, because you can link your local independent bookstore to your online book purchases. Sometimes it's a little bit more, but you see the actual percentage of what you purchased and how much it goes to the local bookstore. So I'm encouraging people, and I recognize that it is, I recognize that sometimes this is a little bit more money, and so you might need to just get a book from the library or go to Barnes & Noble. I understand that. But this is Nitho. Pope, I'm going to tell you right now, this book is for you. I will tell everyone else why in a minute, but Pope, this book is for you. So Nitho is a I'm going to read you the description that they have here on this. So everything that ever happens is skewed by the lens of someone's perception. Keza never planned to fall for a rogue artificial general intelligence, especially one she helped keep imprisoned. But Nitho, the AGI, was fascinating. When Nitho showed Keza how he could help humanity reach a new level of consciousness, her captivation turned to veneration. She was resolved to break Nitho out of his digital prison. Too bad Gel, which is, by the way, is short for Miguel, Gel, her on and off boyfriend, caught her in the act. Now Keza's wasting away in a cell with only a rigged trial to look forward to. Except she has a hunch that Nitho has a backup plan. Or 2. Or 10. There's going to be a jailbreak for both of them. Then the world will see what Keza does in Nitho. They've got so much to learn, and she's just itching for their enlightenment to kick in. Meanwhile, Gel finds himself obsessing over his ex, his role in Keza's imprisonment, and her descent into madness. He's convinced Nitho infected her with a virus, and the AGI has more sinister plans. Gel knows that Keza is the key, that if he can free her from Nitho's grip, she can help them avoid whatever hell is barreling their way. He's just got to figure out how he can reach her. Nitho is a cyberpunk with hints of Lovecraftian cosmic horror and is told through multiple voices. Okay? I want you to remember this. This, by the way, is the beautiful cover art. No, Hawkeye, this is not another good girl falls for bad boy AI. Keza is... How to describe Keza? Keza is a general hacker who gets kind of, rather than, she gets too close to being caught by the GovCorps for hacking, and so she kind of like tries to play it cool, so she goes and she takes a job with the AIC, which is this big GovCorp, which is basically designed to keep artificial... It's a great, I understand the attempt at humor, but in this case it's like the humor is here and it's way over here, right? Like the plot is over here, so the humor doesn't work, and I want to explain why. She is another bad girl who takes the corporate job thinking that she can just kind of get away and just like hide here, and she's literally, there's an entire platoon, army of hackers that are hired to continually keep this firewall in place, to keep this fully sentient and sapient AI contained. Like that's their whole job. And she starts talking to it and becomes obsessed with it and plans to break it out, but gets caught by her ex-boyfriend, who is also another one of the hackers that is in part of this. This whole book. So there's a lot of... This is Pope. This is why I think you would like this. There's a lot of heresy involved in this. So, Hawkeye, I get the poor attempt at humor. Netwatch is upset. Like, look, if you've ever played Cyberpunk Red, and you wanted to play, and you've played Cyberpunk 2020, which is the previous edition of Cyberpunk TTRPG, and you should go look those up for our dear friends at Artel Saurian Games. Hi. Love them. Also, by the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm an Artel Saurian major fan, and I love all of the people over there. Picture in 2020 if a rabid is contained in instead of being like shoved into a corner and firewalled off, they are in a box that is perpetually testing the firewall, and you need perpetual army of hackers to keep that firewall intact. And one of those hackers is now enamored and or in love with the rabid. That's where we're at. This book is... And then you have a sprinkling of... Nitho has just seen into the... Nitho can show you truth. Capital T, truth. and it has a physical effect on people. And maybe it's a virus, or maybe it is literally like you stared into the abyss too long and the abyss stares back. But the book is well written. It's interesting because the sprinklings of the world building that we get are... No, this is a cyberpunk plot. This is cyberpunk, not Mechton. This is cyberpunk with Lovecraft. This is... I'm not going to spoil anything by saying that Nitho is there are lots of comparisons that could be made to a great old one. Time. But picture, instead of the velociraptors testing the digital, like Time says, the AI are as velociraptors testing the digital fence. Yeah, this will end well. Yeah, but picture instead Nitho as the Tarask testing the digital fence. And finding a sympathetic individual who's willing to help them and talk to them. Yeah. The interesting... It's very... It's... Pope says, yeah, I'm reminded of the 40K term, abominable intelligence. Yes. Yes. And the interesting thing is, this book... Because I still have the digital copy, right? Like, so this book is from multiple POV. There is one chapter. It is the last chapter of the book from Nitho's perspective. But there are... All of the other chapters of the book are from... You start with Geza's perspective, and then you have Gel, like Miguel, her ex-boyfriend who reported her to the government corp perspective. You have Edgar, who is my personal favorite character, who is the shrink, who is brought in to evaluate Keza, but also he is brought in because he also treats AI. Right, like that's his profession is as a psychiatrist to AI. Then you have a couple other perspectives for other characters who I'm not going to spoil, but the entire book is all of their perspectives, and then the final chapter is from Nitho's perspective, and you're like, you see this growing understanding of the whole, like, all of these different characters having these different first-person experiences with this shifting worldview, and then at the end, you meet Nitho. And it's very interesting because the world building is also very interesting, in my opinion. It is a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk setting with GovCorps, and there's no real government, there's just corporate, towns now and all those kind of things. And the main plot takes place in Armonk, New York. And like every time we go somewhere in this world and we're describing things, I'm just like, y'all, you put the headquarters of the major, like government corporation that runs this entire thing and is, the only thing keeping this giant abominable intelligence contained in Armonk, right? Like, it's just an... So, in my opinion, it is a very well-written book. It is a very enjoyable story. I personally felt we had too many perspectives, right? Like, I felt you could have lived with just 3, but there's actually 5 different perspectives besides Nitho, right? So there's technically 6 perspectives, and they get chapter perspectives. I felt you could have gotten away with just Keza, Edgar, and Gel, but there are two other perspectives that are interesting, but I don't think it necessarily needed. Because anything Lovecraftian has to happen in the Northeast. I mean, fair. But Armonk is like... It's Armonk. I just, like, I don't know how to describe it. It's Armonk. If you lived in, like, Westchester or Fairfield County, it would be like, if somebody said Armonk, you'd be like, what? So, I enjoyed it. I think a lot of people really enjoy it. I personally think it could have been a little bit tightened up. That I don't think we need quite... The two of the perspectives that we meet, well, interesting plot-wise, don't really do anything perspective-wise, right? Like, sometimes having those characters give a perspective means that we're getting repeated, not quite repeated, but almost repeated information from a previous character's perspective. And it's... You see how these characters are building the tension in between each other, and all of it's kind of building to one, but I personally didn't think we needed all of them. Other people may differ. I would say that this is definitely a book that if you like cyberpunk, if you like Lovecraft, if you like Warhammer 40k, pick this up, give it a read. It is a very interesting take on things. And I will also say that I personally didn't feel that... There are a couple sex scenes in this book that I didn't feel... sorry, didn't mean to hit that button. Didn't feel... Like, I understood what what the author was trying to do with them plot-wise, but I think it didn't need to be there to do the same thing in the plot, if that makes sense. Like, I understood that none of the sex scenes are there for erotic reasons. It's not more gratuitous than needed, although there is a possibility of a little bit of that. Like, none of these are, the few sex scenes that are in this book are not about romance or even sexual attraction. They're there for other plot reasons that the presence of the characters engaging in sexual intercourse kind of makes sense, but the description of them is tied to more like quasi supposed to be described in a romance novel way, but these aren't romance novel sex scenes. But think of the film rights. Look, if this gets made, it needs to be David Villeneuve, and it needs to be the same production crew that he did Blade Runner 2049 with. Done. That's what this needs to be. But I almost think, because it's one of those, like, this... You could do that same expression of engagement in sex without also trying to describe it in a romantic way, because these are not romantic sex scenes, right? Like, these are not... They serve other plot functions, and they serve a plot function, right? Like, they're not gratuitous in the sense that they are just stuck there because somebody needed, like, in a needed to believe that they needed to be there, but rather the sense that if you understand why these two characters are engaging in sexual intercourse, you would say that you could do that same moment by expressing that those characters are engaging in sexual intercourse without having the long description that's phrased with romance language terminology, right? Like, I think that's where the problem is. If this was because these sex scenes are not romantic. They're mostly, the first one is literally the definition of clinical getting the rocks off, right? Like, that's what it is. And but the phrasing and the words chosen in the text are very iconic phrasing and words used in a large number of romance novels. Yeah, non-romance dressed as romance. And it felt to me off, right? Like, you read through the book, you know exactly why this scene. Okay. Everybody, the spoiler warning tag is up. If you do not want spoilers for what I'm trying to explain, skip it. I'll take it, step away. I'll take the spoiler tag off. It's above me on the overlay. I'll take that off when we stop spoilers. Okay? In 3, 2, 1. Spoiler alert. So the first sex scene is actually a scene between Keza and Edgar. Edgar, who is the shrink who's brought in to evaluate her. And she forces this scene because she wants him to prove that they're not being monitored, either audio or visually, while in the quote-unquote prison that she's being held in, right? Like, she knows that she's being monitored by the GovCorp trying to get her. So the scene exists for a noir moment. And it's an entirely her power dynamic forcing him to prove that they're not being monitored in a way that would be very obviously, you know, someone would very obviously interject themselves into this kind of moment. But the phrasing is all romance novel phrasing, and you're like, this does not compute. Like, this is not a romantic moment for either party involved. This is from Edgar's perspective, and he is entirely talking about why he's doing this as a show of trust to get his patient to trust him and believe him when he says that they are not being monitored, right? Like, that's what this is. And it's dialogue and descriptions are not matching. Oh, time, I would totally read that. But yes, send me that. Or just link me where I can find it, because I can find it. But I think this is just a case of, I'm going to take the spoiler tag off now. For those of you who stepped away, we're all now back. Spoilers gone. No more spoilers. But I think this is a case of the author writing something and current marketing and market tactics being like, hey, you're engaging with romance in this novel. You should phrase it in romantic language. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't. No, you shouldn't. You should keep this gritty and dark, because this is not a romance novel. This is gritty and dark and twisted. And if it had kept like that, I think that would be 10 times better. But do recommend. I don't recommend this for everybody, because I recognize that there's a lot in this novel that isn't for everyone. But again, if you like Cyberpunk Red, if you like Lovecraft, if you like film noir, if you like Warhammer 40K, you would probably enjoy this. And it's a pretty quick read. It's under 300 pages, and it's romancing the Skynet. Coldrake, you're not wrong. that God, yeah, that actually works. But I'm going to drop the link to pre-order in from bookshops.org, or you can try and find it anywhere else. Sherry Singerling is the author. It comes out in 3 days, January 7th. So if this is a book that you might be interested in, go check it out. Maybe ask your local library if they have a copy, if they're going to get a copy. but I think some people will really, really enjoy this, and I want more people to read it so I can talk with them about it, because I have opinions, and my number one opinion is we need more Edgar. That's it. All right. So, yeah, I think there's supposed to be an audiobook. It could be very pretty. I don't know anything about it. I mean, for me, I don't gravitate towards audiobooks because of just it's difficult for me to listen and process. I have an auditory processing issue, so that would be a thing. Coldrake, it's not shipping the AI boys. It is full on, much, much darker than that. But I think you would enjoy it. Pope, I pretty 99.9% sure will enjoy it. And even if Pope doesn't, he will at least have interesting commentary about it. But on that note, on shifting gears, fair. Shifting entire gears. I have entirely time to pop the clutch. Yeah, exactly. We have next up a book set in the world of one of my favorite standalone fantasy novels of all time, by one of my favorite fantasy authors of all time. Catherine Addison has a new, actually technically Catherine Addison has a, like, what is it? She has, she has 2 books coming out this year, both set in the world of the Goblin Emperor. And one of the first one that I just finished, it's a relatively short book, called The Orb of Kairado, I think is how it's pronounced. It's Cairado. It is short. It is 172 pages. 172? 120, excuse me, 120 pages. It is a short novella set in the same world as the Goblin Emperor, not tied to the other trilogy with our necromancer priest and goblin opera writer. Instead, this is a academic artifact heist novelette. And it is, I love Catherine Addison's world. I love this book series. I love the world in which it's written. I have so much love for this series. I will say, first things first, if you have not read The Goblin Emperor, this book, you could technically read this independently, but so much of the world will not make sense because so much of the world building is in The Goblin Emperor. And you're like, this will not make as much sense. But it is a very, like, again, it's a short novel. It's 120 pages, very quick read. It's an interesting thought process. So Goblin Emperor itself is a standalone, right? The book, The Goblin Emperor, is a standalone. But then Catherine Addison has gone back and written a trilogy of short novels based on one of the side characters in the Goblin Emperor book. That has nothing to do with the main plot of the Goblin Emperor book. It is just one of the characters in that book leaves the court, and this is what he does when he, Witness for the Dead, Grief of Stones, and now Tomb of Dragons is coming in March. The Orb of Carido is a novel set in the same world with characters who are just entire. So like the main character in this book starts at, and we go back to like the premise of the actual Goblin Emperor, and the premise of the Goblin Emperor is that the main character is the youngest son of the Emperor, and he is only half elf. His mother was a goblin. It was supposed to be like this political marriage. She dies, and he's kind of sent away to live in the Goblin Emperor. He's sent away to live in a country house, like just basic servants, while his father and his older brothers, who are all full elves and are, run the country. Well, then the opening of the book is literally that the airship that the Emperor and his sons were on exploded, and this half elf, half goblin inherits the throne, and what he has to do to deal with the political fallout, all of that. Also, the question of whether or not his father and brothers were murdered and assassinated, if there's a possibility of whatever. Yeah. Kid is the fourth spare until, exactly, giant explosion. Actually, I think he's like seventh in line or something. There's like multiple people in front of him. And then totally not trained for political. Exactly, totally not trained for anything. And then the Orb of Carido, the main character in this book, is this is much less political thriller. It is a academic heist book. The main character was a history professor and in charge of a bunch of artifacts at the university. And when we meet him at the beginning of the book, he's been let go from the university because an item, the Orb of one of these particular items has been stolen, and he's basically the convenient fall guy because he's the lowest man on the totem pole and whatever. And then we start the book at the time of the explosion of the Emperor's airship, because the main character in the Orb of Carido is friends with one of the people who worked on the airship, right? Like that was his job. It was like just the technicians and the engineers on the ship. And this is much more a look at how, well, we have the academic heist going on as the main plot. We also have the lower level look at the other people's reactions to the Emperor's airship being destroyed, right? Like the lower peons, not the court, not the politics that the main character in the Goblin Emperor, Marin, oh god, what's his name? What is his name? What is his actual name? Dang it. Anyways, the main character in the Goblin Emperor is that book is very heavily about politics and political tensions and other things. And the Orb of Carido is about other people reacting to the Emperor, like the common, quote unquote, common people, middle class and lower class people reacting to the destruction and the death of the Emperor, but also looking at the fact that there were other people on, like, right? Like, there's an entire staff, the pilots, the engineers, the wait staff, all on this airship, and they all died as well. And how do you deal with grief of that situation when the public grief of the Emperor and his sons and their families, and then the issue of, like, the new emperors coming in? So it's a very kind of tense look at things. It's a very short book. It's very, very well done. Firmly recommend for anyone who enjoyed the Goblin Emperor. Or and I think it's a very quick kind of read. But you get to, whatever. And I think if you, I will say you have to, plot wise, you don't have to have read The Goblin Emperor to read this. But for world building, so much of the world building isn't. Catherine Addison doesn't explain things in her world building. She just kind of dumps you into it and assumes that you will, follow along and get there by context clues and understanding. But because of that, so many of the things that are kind of like understood and become explained in the Goblin Emperor are then used in the Orb of Kairado. Kairado, maybe Kairado. Yeah, I like the not being led around by the nose by her writing. Yeah, it very much. And it's so. But because of that, there are a bunch of things that you're like, what? If you haven't read The Goblin Emperor, you should. Hey, go read The Goblin Emperor. Go read all of Catherine Addison. Just read all of Catherine Addison and enjoy the academic world building that goes on. And then come back to read The Orb of Kairado. I'm going to drop the bookshop.org link. I can't really say anything so much about the plot in this book because it's a mystery heist. It's a mystery heist. Somebody's died. Somebody inherits a thing. Let's go find the missing item of the thing. Right? Like, yeah, that kind of same level of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Somebody died and sent someone else the thing, and now they're going on an adventure following the clues to the thing. That's what this kind of book is. I don't remember time. If I honestly don't. Oh, sorry. I honestly don't. It's just not one of the ones I remember at the moment. Do we have it to date the same femme fatale? Nope. Nope. No, you do not. It is a very interesting kind of book. I think again, I can't give you any more because then you'll have spoilers, and this is a book that you really, plot-wise, shouldn't have spoilers for. Again, it's 120 pages. It's very quick, very easy read. Go read it. Enjoy it. Comes out January 31st, 2025. Plenty of time to embrace the whole thing. But, so going from Nitho, which is a thing, right? Like, Nitho is indeed a thing. To the Orb of Kairado, which is, very much a continuation of the world of the Goblin Emperor and tied very tangentially to the plots. Do they have to be a fatale? I mean, no. Look, character art is great. Ooh, speaking of, I need to remember to do things and send a message. Because I have a friend that I need to commission art from. But But, sorry, I needed to take a minute to breathe and shift gears. So in 2024, I read very quickly through the entire trilogy. What is the actual trilogy called? Empire of the Wolf trilogy by Richard Swan. Starting with Justice of Kings, and then Justice of Kings, Tyranny of Faith, Trials of Empire. Firmly recommend, go read it. It is, as I have described, it's somebody's Warhammer fantasy game that they wrote as a novel, and it is beautifully done, beautifully written. The characters are very compelling, and who doesn't love the fact that Sir Conrad von Valt is literally a necromantic judge who can compel you to tell the truth in court. Can also compel the dead to tell the truth, so there's that. Very, very good. Great book. Very enjoyable. Loved the series, right? And the Justice of Kings is about how the Empire is going to be built up and and how this stabilizes. It's a very, very good trilogy. I don't see the double stack of books to the side tonight. Are we starting 2025? A new 2025 stack? Yes! Yes, we are, Coldrake. We are starting with... So, Coldrake, I am a tangential Warhammer 40k fan. I am a bigger Warhammer Fantasy fan. I like Age of Sigmar, but I actually really, really like Warhammer Fantasy. If you want a Warhammer 40k fan, that's Pope. Like, I'm tangentially aware, and I know enough because I've read a bunch of Warhammer 40k, and I've played, like, a bunch of different 40k editions. Not mini games. Tabletop, not minis. I don't have the money for that. You are correct, Time. A wolf is... So Time says, also a wolf is one of the creatures preventing Dante from leaving the Dark Wood at the beginning of the Divine Comedy. Yep. Yep. But, so Justice of Kings, which is the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, I think is what it's called. Richard Swan. Brilliant series, brilliant author. It's intriguing. And it's kind of very... So the trilogy is really interesting because Conrad von Valt is the protagonist of the story, or it's his story, but the protagonist of the book is actually his assistant, and it's all told from her perspective, and she's telling it as a flashback, Helena. And sorry, I was like, what's her name? Helena. And so it's about her. She's training up to becoming Emperor's Justice like Sir Conrad is. And so she has a very interesting outsider perspective of what he's doing. And you see what he's doing, and he's the main focal point for the plot and how the plot is driven forward and how this, you know, his actual choices and actions affect the Empire, mostly because he firmly does believe in justice and all of these things, you know, the rule of law, and that everyone should be equal under the law, and we built it up this way. And so when he runs afoul in his position of a when he runs afoul of individuals who are both politically and religiously manipulating situations for their own gain because of low-level crimes. Well, not really low-level, moderate-level crimes that they've committed. Look, if you're plotting treason, right, a single murder is kind of low-level. And Sir Conrad is like, no, I'm still going to prosecute you for murder. And these other characters are like, bet. Because we're, and so it's how this dichotomy of this individual who truly believes in these systems of justice gets really involved in a political situation that's very kind of messy. That's the trilogy. Go read it. No more spoilers. Just love Conrad von Volt and appreciate the fact that his manservant, Bressinger, is literally the best. Just saying. But it is like a Warhammer fantasy novel. Lots of blood, lots of murder, possibility of dismemberment. Very dark. Pope says, so what I'm hearing is you're more of a Gore-Tex and Felix fan. I mean, kind of, yeah. Please forgive me all. I have a tendency to wear my learning heavily. Welcome to the party time. It's me, right? It's me. Hi. It's me. So Space Spanish Inquisition? No. This is all German fantasy, medieval, serve the Holy Roman Empire and do your job kind of shit. But that's the original trilogy. Grave Empire is the beginning of a new trilogy set, I think it's supposed to be like 300 years later, after the events of the Emperor of the Wolf. So yeah, I think it's 300 years. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was 300 years. So Grave of Empire looks at what Empire of the Wolf is, moves the timeline forward 300 years, brings forward the Industrial Revolution, brings forward cannons and guns. In a world where there's still low-level sorcery. Hi. You've brought Industrial Revolution black powder into your Warhammer fantasy. Or more accurately, you've brought guns and necromancy into an Industrial Revolution into your Warhammer fantasy. And it's so good. It's almost... So I don't... Coldrake, I think there are steampunk elements to this novel. And I'm saying that because of just the way it's written and the stylization. But it is much more... what's the... Hold on, what's it called? It's much more in the line of Full Metal Alchemist and Steam Boy than Victoriana British steampunk, right? Like, I would actually make a comparison to the setting of Full Metal Alchemist. Not the plot and not the characters, although there is a character who, if you like Roy Mustang, you would probably enjoy in this book. But you know how, like, people talk about steampunk and it's very... It's slightly more... There's always this underlying belief in even in steampunk, particularly when I knew a lot of people. I went to a lot of cons, y'all. I went to so many cons, and a lot of them was Dragon Con, and I went to Dragon Con in the early 2000s, and steampunk was everywhere. And there's a lot of hopefulness, quote unquote, in steampunk art that's more Victoriana based versus steampunk that's Japanese based, because a lot of Japanese steampunk, there is the more hopeful stuff like the end of Steam Boy, but the setting, you get stuff like Violet Evergarden, Empire of Corpses, you know, think more, yeah, more Jade Empire. Exactly. Think more Jade Empire. In that kind of Clockwork Planet, you know, D. Gray Man even, right? Like this underlying turn of the century Blade Runner-ish. No, less of that. More of well, I mean, look at this cover, right? Look at this cover. It's pretty. But anthropomorphized wolves carrying fixed bayonet muskets, sharks with armor, demon skull, right? Like demon skull. The cover implies empire and demons. Yeah, like there's a lot going on here. There are wolves. There are Hessians, right? Like this is okay. Here's what it is. This had much more the vibe, the steampunk quote unquote vibe, for. It's a little bit too early for steampunk. I actually think I should step that back. It's less steampunk, but the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, right? Like, it's not quite full steampunk, which is the full integration of the steam engine and the full all of this. But this is the beginnings of, like, black powder and all of these things. Hey, Lysander, welcome in. And I would say instead, the better comparison to be made is the Johnny Depp Sleepy Hollow movie with Christina Ricci, right? That Sleepy Hollow movie, that is very, very much, the vibe of this book. There are ghosts. There is magic. There is also cannons and science and guns. And sharks with armor. Yes, the shark with armor on the cover of this book is relevant. Also werewolves as Hessians. Werewolf Hessians, okay? That's what you need to picture. Werewolf Hessian mercenaries. The science, technology, and sleep. Exactly. It's like a mystical as magic, but there's a little bit more science involved. And yeah, like that kind of grimdark. Not grimdark, but I mean, it's a little grimdark, but not what I would call like the novel of Chris Mark. And we've looped back to Christopher Lee. Yes, there are two characters in this book that I would want Christopher Lee to play, and unfortunately he's dead. Goth black powder fantasy, less goth and more gothic. Those are two different things. Are they like armored bears, but sharks instead? No. Because armored bears are one thing. These are sharks with plate armor. And, like, Hessian mercenaries and the Empress and the Sublime is at play. Yeah, the Sublime in the Dark Sublime. Okay, so I'm just going to read you the blurb. Now we've gone through this whole description of what this is. From critically acclaimed author Richard Swan, Grave Empire begins the epic tale of an empire on the verge of industrial revolution, where sorcery and arcane practices are outlawed, and where an ancient prophecy threatens the coming end of days. Blood once turned the wheels of empire. Now it is money. A new age of exploration and innovation has dawned, and the Empire of the Wolf stands to take its place as the foremost power in the known world. Glory and riches await. But dark days are coming. A mysterious plague has broken out in the pagan kingdoms to the north, while in the south, the Empire's proxy war in the lands of the Wolfmen is weeks away from total collapse. Worse still is the message brought to the Empress by two heretic monks who claim to have lost contact with the spirits of the afterlife. The monks believe that this is the start of an ancient prophecy heralding the end of days. Great silence. It falls to Renata Rainier, a low-ranking ambassador to an enigmatic and vicious race of mermen. Did I mention the sharks in plate armor? To seek answers for those who still practice the arcane arts. But with the road south beset by war and the Empire on the brink of supernatural catastrophe, soon there may not be a world left to save. So you could start this whole series, like there is 300 years between the first trilogy and this new series, but they are in the same world. And there's like one or two references to individuals in the first series as like historical lessons, right? Like mentions of them as like the great historical figure or whatever. So it's not really spoilers for their story, but yes, Coldrake, even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayers each night can become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the moon is shining bright. Yep. Except in this case, there's an entire kingdom to the south and there's a whole proxy war going on between them and other Hessian mercenaries. Again, werewolf, Hessian, mercenary. Actually less werewolf and more full-on furries. Full bipedal wolfmen who aren't affected by moon turning and therefore yes, was very, very good. I kind of feel this is one thing that I dislike, right? Okay, so first of all, this book is being published by my number 1/2 fantasy publisher right now, Orbit. The one thing I hate is the fact that they put on the cover of these books blurbs from other authors about the previous series. Not about this book, but about the previous series. And you're just like, why? You couldn't give out let them blurb it's even worse when it's not the book that they're blurbing. Exactly, not on the front, it's annoying. Put it on the back in general, but this is like, you couldn't have somebody blurb this book. Instead, it's the blurb of the first book of the previous trilogy. Like, I'm glad that R.J. Barker likes Justice of Kings. That's great, because I liked R.J. Barker and I like Richard Swan's Justice of Kings. Great. I think R.J. Barker is a great author. I like these, whatever. It's good. But I'm like, Nicholas Ames talking about the Justice of Kings. Why? This does nothing. Yeah. It's just the other version of the cover, and it's but yes, it will be, I'm going to drop the bookshop.org link in chat. You can read this without having read the previous trilogy, but the previous trilogy, yeah, you know, I think is going to be, here's a new book. Let us blurb about previous books. Yes, Orbit, if you are listening. Not my favorite. Not my favorite. Lysander says, if I ever get this book, I'm photoshopping my own cover to stick on top. I mean, it wouldn't be hard, right? Like, all you would have to do is Photoshop out the blurbs, because that cover is beautiful. Who did the cover art? Like, who did the cover art? Bup, 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 bup. Orbit. Who did the cover art for this book? Orbit. Orbit US. Okay. Reject. Okay. Okay, who did the cover art for this book? I mean, a lot of people who like Andrzej Sapkowski also like this book, but okay, great. That's the author. Who did the cover art? Orbit. Orbit. Damn it. Hey, maybe Richard Swan has it on his website. Okay. Okay, Richard Swan. Books. Okay, so I was right. The first trilogy is called The Empire of Wolf. Great. Now... Poopies. Why are you not telling... I get very frustrated. Radimir. Okay. So, I get very frustrated when people don't give me the book. But, on his website, I have, however, found the best thing in the world. This is Bessinger. Spoiler alert for the end of Justice of Kings. But this piece of art is absolutely gorgeous, and this encapsulates so much from this character, and I love Bessinger. Bessinger kicks ass. Severina. Severina is dope. Ressi, also important character. Radimir! Asshole. Useful asshole, but asshole. And Heinrich. Heinrich is best boy. If you didn't know that, Heinrich is best boy. But is there no... That's Geralt. Okay, but where's... But no one did... No... Okay, but they didn't do... Oh, it's all Tyranny of Faith. Oh, well, yeah, that's important to know. I love this when the author says, I've commissioned many pieces of art from the Empire of Wolf trilogy over the years. Here they are in their high definition glory. The Muprab, Helena and Heinrich. Oh, look. Helena and Heinrich at Badenburg. Nema Shrine Guardian. Like, I love when artists or authors put their art, like the art they commission, up. And let us all enjoy it and share it. It doesn't look like Orbit is listing the cover art, or at least not that I can find. And it's not on... Yeah, so it's not on even his website, which is sad. So yeah, I don't know. But that is, I really, those are 3 books that I've read. Again, all of those are advanced reader copies that I got to read, ARC versions. Um, so they're all coming out in the near future. Grave of Empire comes out February 4th. Orb of Carido comes out January 31st. And Nitho comes out January 7th. I mean, to be fair, time, I understand that. I am actually probably going to do another stream tomorrow. Um, but it's still weekend, so there's that. Um, go rest well if you need it. Um, I am going to shift in a minute. We're going to take a break. But these are the books that I've read this week. Um, all of the links I put in chat, I'll post them again. So first up, we have Nitho, our cyberpunk Lovecraftian horror about AI and the humans and what they deal with it. Then we have The Orb of Carido, which is a side novella. I want to say it's a novella. It's 120 pages. It's a novella. For what's the word I'm looking for? Goblin Emperor. Grave Empire, which I didn't talk as much about the plot of Grave Empire, but that's okay. Grave Empire is... I don't want to spoil it, right? Like, this is a book where you shouldn't be spoiled beyond the general understanding of they need to figure out if they can use magic to fix a thing when magic is now illegal and there's politics and gunpowder involved. Also, mermen, sharks with plate armor, and full-on furry wolf furries as Hessian mercenaries. Just throwing that out there. Yeah. So all of those, I posted the bookshop.org link. You can always go on bookshop.org and if you sign in and you can link your own. The great thing is if you order them or pre-order, you can get them. Should you read the first trilogy? Yes. Yes, you should. Richard Swan's Empire of the Wolves trilogy starts with Justice of Kings. It is... If you have any love of... It's very much a Warhammer fantasy trilogy. It's very much Justice... God, Sir Conrad von Waltz is a necromancer. You know, he rides around the Empire serving the Emperor's justice, and as part of that, he can compel the dead to speak and can compel people to speak the truth. Like, he has the voice. And it's great. And it's a brilliant trilogy. And 2 of my favorite characters are of all time are in this trilogy. Bressinger, and Heinrich. For those of you who don't know, Heinrich is the dog. This is not a spoiler. I don't consider this a spoiler. I consider this a content warning. The dog lives, right? Like, that's it. That's not a spoiler. That is required information. The dog is best boy and the dog lives. But can you compel the dead to lie? I guess in theory, it gets complicated. Okay, that's an interesting kind of breakdown, although I don't necessarily know that I agree with it. Time was saying that on a side note concerning Inquisition and witch burnings, a dude did a genetic comparison of folks with magic backgrounds versus non-magic stomach hunch people. He was thinking magic folk would have an X Factor mutant. Instead, it was worked out that thanks to the Inquisition and burnings, the church basically was genetic cleansing the psychic abilities. I mean, maybe. I would like to point out that only the Spanish burned people like that. You burned heretics. You didn't burn witches. But alt-right conspiracy fantasy. Yeah, it's not. It's not. I think there's a lot of problems with that science, but we'll go from there. Anyways, back to books. And to answer Lysander's further question, go read the first trilogy and then go read, because you've got time, because Grave Empire doesn't come out until February. So you have time to read the first trilogy, and they're not long books, right? They're okay. Well, Grave Empire is like 544 pages. How long is Justice of Kings? Is not that long. Justice of Kings is like is less than 500 pages. So I think it's. I don't think of this as long. Vague. Yeah, that makes sense. But those are the books I've read in the last couple days since New Year's. Um, Look, I acknowledge my, whatever. So those are the books that I've read in the last couple days. Gonna take a short break, stretch, get some more water, refresh, and then when we come back, we can talk about what I'm plotting for the next game that's going to be on the channel. And I'll be having an like generic AMA because I am plotting and there is hype. And I am doing a shit ton of math to do so. But I'm going to be right back. And I'm going to run the ad break while we're gone. And I will see you in a few minutes, everybody. Bye. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. How are you doing? We're shifting gears. Thank you for those subscriptions, Quentin and Goldrake. Really appreciate those. All of this joy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Time asks, concerning math, I'm wondering if I should try a mature student course to see if calculus becomes any less impenetrable. Look, I have fun with calculus. So, y'all take with that as you wish. And now for something completely different. Actually, less completely different. Hold on, I realized I did not have something. I'll be right back because I have to go get it. And it's downstairs. So you get to have another like 30 seconds of funness without me. BRB. Okay, I have the thing. And the thing, by the way, is technically a book. Um, but yes, less Monty Python, more Clue. You know, running up and downstairs to find the thing that you had, and then go back and get the thing, and it's all fine. But this is the 2024 D&D Dungeons Master's Guide with the updated, you know, rule set, interesting things that have changed, all of that good stuff, right? And benefits of not being seen for a minute longer. Fair. But, so this is the 2024, look at the pretty, very pretty, rule set for 2024 Dungeons Master's Guide. And smack in the middle of it, smack dab in the middle of it, when they want to talk to you about planning an adventure and running a world and all of that stuff. And how, although they do include the rules for session 0, they have some very beautiful art, all of this kind of stuff. And then they do this. Hello. Welcome, all y'all. Old school gamers. Let's bring back Greyhawk. Let's bring back Greyhawk. And, let's bring back the whole frickin' map. Poster size map that's in the back of this book, which I have not taken out yet. And I am very excited. So I know a lot about Faerun. Not as much as some people, because not my favorite. I'm not a big, like, I've read a few of the Drista Weirden books. I know Faerun because I have an eidetic memory, and so I know all of the setting lore that they drop. But Greyhawk. Greyhawk is where I first played. Greyhawk is where I will always go back to. And there is such a feeling difference between Faerun and Greyhawk. It's the difference between whimsical shenaniganry D&D and A Song of Ice and Fire, right? Like, there is a... You could not have Acquisitions Incorporated in Greyhawk, right? Like, Acquisitions Incorporated, that works in Faerun. Doesn't work in Greyhawk. Oh, and I am not a Greyhawk apologist. I freely acknowledge that this setting was the original D&D setting in the 1972, and it suffers from a lot of things, right? Like, Greyhawk suffers from a lot of not so great things. And part of it really was the fact that one of the biggest things, one of the biggest problems with Greyhawk is the fact that, except for occasionally republishing old adventures in new editions, Wizards of the Coast didn't touch Greyhawk as a setting since the 90s. Right? Like, TSR was publishing a series when they got bought by Wizards of the Coast in 93. And then Wizards of the Coast didn't touch it. Didn't touch it at all. And then they kind of, like, republished a few adventures that were, like, first edition adventures in, or second edition adventures in third edition and fourth edition. And that's basically all they did. They didn't touch any of the very complicated, yeah, it had some, 3 and 3.5 had some Greyhawk support, but not really. And really, all the support that it had was really, here are these adventures that you really, really enjoy. We're adding it to the new rules. Go play Tomb of Horrors in the new edition. And you're like, great. I can die in the Tomb of Horrors again. Yeah, that was the between times when 3.0 versus 3.5 versus 4 was creating chaos. Yeah, a lot of that. And there are some built-in issues with Greyhawk that I think you could come around. Like, I'm planning to work around. It's some of the built-in some similar built-in issues to The Witcher. Witcher continent world building. It's a lot darker. Greyhawk has some comedic places, but inherently it's darker, right? Like, it's just, Greyhawk is darker. And it's, the adventures in Greyhawk were always darker, and the adventures in Faerun can kind of, like, even the adventures that they've published for 5th edition that are quote-unquote darker, like Princes of Apocalypse, or what's the one in Schultz? What's the adventure in Schultz? I'm blanking. Why am I blanking? Tomb of Annihilation. There you go. Prince of Apocalypse, Tomb of Annihilation, and the one where they go to the hells. What is it? It's part of the Descent into Avernus. There we go. Descent into Avernus. Right? Like, Tomb of Annihilation, Descent into Avernus, Princes of Apocalypse. All of those are quote-unquote darker. It is nowhere near as dark as a lot of as Greyhawk, right? Like, Descent into Avernus canonically has a flying pink elephant with a top hat as a character. And you're just like, what? And you go with it. Like, the two new you know, the things that are going to come out that are supposed to be coming out soon are going to be with the new 2024 compatible book is Vecna, Eye of Ruin, and Quests of the Infinite Staircase. And okay, Quest of the Infinite Staircase is a whole different thing. Vecna comes from Greyhawk, right? Like, Vecna comes from Greyhawk. There's a whole bunch of other things that are going to be going on in that, but you know, there's a whole bunch of explanation that's tied to that. But it is, you know, Vecna as a character is 1,000 times scarier in Greyhawk than in Faerun, and you're just like, let's make it worry. So Koldrake asks, is that why they shaved all the races down to better fit Greyhawk? Maybe. Because a bunch of races that they've added are all not Ebony, Airborne, the steampunk world, from 4th edition that I'm blanking on. Eberron. Yeah, Eberron. You were correct. Thank you, Pope. Yeah, Vecna comes from Greyhawk and then gets his butt handed to him in Planescape, but in Greyhawk, you dead, right? Like, if you meet Vecna in Faerun, it's dangerous. You're probably gonna have a bad day, but you might survive. Like, there's a actual realistic possibility of survival. If you meet Vecna in Greyhawk, you dead. Your family's dead. The entire, like, 20-mile radius around you is dead. There's none of this, you know, whatever. And Vecna's not even the scariest thing in Greyhawk. Like, Vecna is not the scariest thing in Greyhawk. That's this dude on the cover here. Yeah, like, and as Pope says, Greyhawk has far lower magic. Not quite Dark Sun, but closer to Dark Sun than Faerun. Yeah, if you're looking at, like, a sliding scale of magic in the quote-unquote world setting, full, heavy, magic is everywhere, everything has to do with magic, magic is just, like, used to solve petty problems, is Faerun. Then you work your way down, and then you get to Eberron, where there is magic, but there's a lot of technology, and it's kind of balancing itself out. Then you continue down, and you continue down, and you get to like 3/4 of the way down, and that's Greyhawk. And then you get to the far other end of the spectrum, and that is Dark Sun. There is no magic, you are fucked. And I like playing D&D. I enjoy a lot of the things that you can do with D&D. I enjoy building my own worlds a lot of the time when it comes to D&D. My biggest problem with D&D is people who want to only kind of play in Faerun, because there are a lot of people, particularly in 5th edition. This is not everyone. I would like to remind everyone, this is not everyone. A large percentage of the population who play D&D 5th edition want and enjoy a very particular type of play wherein they will always win. Now, there are those who don't. Like, we're acknowledging that there are those who don't, but a large number of people who play 5th edition, and what 5th edition has really kind of encouraged is the players will always win, and there is not a lot of lasting consequences, right? Like, a long rest will give you full hit points in 5th edition. And if you want even more broken, we played yesterday in the Roll for Fisher House one shot, and I played a Grave Cleric, right? And this is the first time I actually have seen the new new spell changes for the 2024 edition, right? Like, this is the first time I've seen them and played with them. Let's just like take straight up Cure Wounds, right? Cure Wounds in the new edition at level 1 is 2d8 plus your spellcasting modifier. Healing Word at level 1 is 2d4 plus your spellcasting modifier, and then at every level increase, it increases by 2d4 instead of 1d4, and Cure Wounds increases by 2d8 instead of 1d8. So you're like, look, if you are gonna have a lot of healing, play, you need a lot more things to fight with. And I don't mind that. Like, I don't mind that. I don't mind that there's that. I personally like more tension in my games. I like the possibility of it, not everyone, there is an inherent possibility that things could go wrong. As Rose says, remembers coming across an adult red dragon sunning on a rock with a group of level 3 folks who really wanted to attack the dragon. Yeah, don't. And I think that's part of the... I understand that a lot of people are really into the narrative and they want to tell this great story and the story of how this works. But then I look at the fact that if you just focused on the narrative, go play... just do an improv. Just do theater, right? Like... But if you want to actually engage with mechanics of a TTRPG and play a game where there is actual chance involved, you need to acknowledge that the possibility that you may not always win. And a lot of way in which 5th edition has been marketed and pushed, and particularly with Faerun as a world build, you can look at Faerun and go, well, it doesn't matter. There isn't any tension. I can just sleep it off and get up. Or, you know, play with a warlock. I just need a short rest and I have all my spell slots back and I can do 3d10 damage with a cantrip. Right? Like, that's... What did I just look at? I saw it, yeah, so Eldritch Blast. Okay, so the Eldritch Blast for the new rules, still 1d10 force damage. And then cantrip progression, so more beams with whatever. But then if you have Agonizing Blast, right, as one of your Eldritch Invocation options. Now you add your charisma modifier to the roll. So, yeah, I have the unpopular desire of wanting an interesting experience instead of tell a story. Yeah, I don't mind telling a story, but I believe that the story is what happens at the table, and part of the story that comes into this is the mechanics, right? Like, engaging with the mechanics and acknowledging that the dice will be involved with things. So, yesterday's game, lots of fun. Loved it. Totally looking forward to playing with this group of people again. I am here for it. Shelly was a great GM. All of this was great. But it was, with that said, go look up the VOD on Shelly's Twitch. It's there. Lots of fun. I think she's going to post the VOD on YouTube in a little bit, but whatever. But we had 4 players at level 5. We had I played a Shatterkai Cleric, Grave Cleric. We had a Tabaxi Rogue. We had a Half-Elf Warlock. And Chad, North Shore GM, played Kobold Paladin, right? All of us are having a lot of fun. We leaned into it. All of us are regular players who played a lot, so we, lean into things like nat ones and all of these kind of things. It was a really great game. I am the only person who took damage the entire game. And the total amount of damage I took as a level 5 character with a long rest at one point in the game. So I did have a long rest in the middle of the game. I had, in the first combat I took 6 damage, and in the second combat I took a total of 8 damage. I have 43 hit points, right? Like, it was not, it is not in any way about, like, Shelly ran a weak game, or we wanted stronger, blah, blah. It is purely about the mechanics of D&D and how it works with Faerun, and how just the mechanics of D&D in 5th edition are set up that true, to get to be truly threatening to players, you need to put an adult red dragon in front of level 3 players. And most players don't want that. Oh no, a Shadakai Psychic Blade Rogue, that's fun. Shadakai Grave Cleric? Please and thank you. All the fun times. It was great. Yeah, so the setting in the systems kind of like, I like playing D&D. I like have fun playing D&D. Yes, there are other games I play. I play a lot of Witcher. Hi. For those of you who are new here, or maybe you don't know, I have a YouTube with all of my streams, previous game streams. I play a lot of our Telsorian games because I love Witcher. I love Cyberpunk. I love Mechton. I love the true threat of damage that can happen in those games. Consequences are like real choices that can be made. Now it's also threat of damage to both enemies and players, right? Like, my players in my long-running Witcher campaign did some epic moves and rolled epically and got some, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Got some epic, 1 or 2 shot kills because they rolled a crit in the most epic of ways, and then rolled a really high level crit that, I took a guy's head off with a single shot. But at the same time, there was a moment where, like, yeah, your Witcher may lose their arm. I've played a lot of different systems. I've played a lot of different things, but I like seeing how mechanics and setting tie into each other. And so what I want to do is see how the 5th edition rules play with Greyhawk. Greyhawk, which is a setting where you assume people will be, damaged at some point. Right? Like, Greyhawk assumes the setting assumes that a character is probably going to die. Damage and fighting in that game is like just a thing you could do. And because of that, I want to play with Greyhawk and see what the new rules do to that kind of a dark setting. Lysander, I assume you're asking about D&D 4th edition. I have played 4th edition. I don't hate it the way a lot of people do. It is not my personal preference. I see a lot of what they were trying to do, and a lot of the video game inspiration that they were going for. I don't think it worked. And then I also see how 4th edition moved into 5th edition. Right? Like, I'll play 4th edition. If somebody wants to play, I'll play it. But I don't think it played... I don't think it played as well as... let me rephrase this. It wanted to give you video game mechanics, but was still tied to an understanding of D&D and TTRPGs. And so you get to look at the way 4th edition... It's like, right, you had your dailies, you had your... effectively you had your like ultimate spells and ultimate abilities and whatever. And in a video game, there was a timing based on that could work through that timing and would eventually come up, right? Like if you're playing Neverwinter, and Neverwinter is based on 4th edition, the mechanics in Neverwinter are 4th edition mechanics. And you're like, okay, at a certain, if you're involved in a mob, fighting against mobs, and at a certain point you will eventually get your ultimate back, you can use that, you can spam that, here you go. But in the tabletop, that ultimate is now tied to a daily, so you only had that ultimate usage once, maybe twice per day, once per twice per long rest. And it's kind of similar to some stuff that you get now in 5th edition that are long rest tied abilities. But they were much more integral and important to the character and much more limited. Ravenloft is fun. If I'm going to play in Ravenloft, I want to play in 2nd edition, right? Like I've tried playing in Ravenloft in other editions. I have tried playing, I've played through Curse of Strahd as an adventure for 5th edition. Just let me play 2nd edition. let me play Ravenloft in 2nd edition. Dark Sun, shooting things out into the internet. I want to play Dark Sun at Donathan's table. I was like, not Edelyn. Edelyn is his wife. I want to play Dark Sun with Dawn. Lysander says, I think I saw one stream that took the setting of Ravenloft but used Ryutama. I think my brain hurts with that. Like, full on, my brain hurts with that. Because Ryutama assumes a level of hopefulness? Lindy did it? No, Lindy, I've seen Lindy run Ravenloft. She ran Ravenloft and she ran Ryutama, but I didn't think she put the two together. I'll bug her. Lindy, did you run Ravenloft through Ryutama? Now, to be fair, if anyone would do it successfully, it would be Lindy. It was what she rated. Oh, possibly. Like, I mean, I know she ran Ryutama, and I know she's run Ravenloft multiple times. To be fair, if somebody was going to do that, I would believe it of Lindy. Ro asks, it's been a long time and I've never got to play a game. Didn't 2nd edition have components and such for mages? Yes! And bards were actually very complicated to create because you needed certain levels of mage and thief. And you needed to combine them. Also, 2nd edition gave us so just a list of my favorite 2nd edition spells, right? It's where detect traps actually worked. Invisibility to undead was a thing. Locate animals and plants was a thing. Tree steed. Log of Everburning. Mistaken Missive. That was one of my favorites. Speak with Astral Traveler. Always a fun one. Undead Alacrity. Great. Bup, 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 bup. Fire Trap. Some really good spells came out of second edition. Rangers were super hard to get to play at all. Yeah, exactly. You needed to build it correctly. You could play a mage with an 11 int, with like 11 int was, but you needed it for 14s or so for a ranger. I don't remember. I don't want Pathfinder second edition. I want D&D second edition. No, you needed 2 13s and 2 14s. So you needed Strength 13, Dex 13, Con 14, and Wisdom 14. And you could only be a human, an elf, or a half-elf. You were very close. What was the requirements for Bard again? Yeah, Bard is the other one that was crazy, right? Like, you needed a Dex of 12, an Intelligence of 13, and a Charisma of 15. And you, again, human or half-elf. You couldn't be anything other than human or half-elf for a Bard. Mage... Yeah, a mage's minimum intelligence requirement is a 9. But again, human, elf, or half-elf. Yeah. Druid. A druid needs a wisdom of 12 and a charisma of 15. Human and half-elf. And a fighter needs a strength of 9. And all races could be a fighter. A cleric needs a wisdom of 9. And all races were allowed. Like, what about a paladin? Oh my god. No, paladin is legit the worst. Paladin in second edition is the worst. You need a strength of 12, a con of 9, wisdom of 13, and charisma of 17. Right? Like, and only humans could be paladins. Only humans could be paladins. And then you get like into the specializations that you could get into, right? Berserker, which is a group of from the paladin, from warrior. Strength 14, con 14, charisma 13. Human or trollborn. You could be a trollborn berserker. Barbarians could only be humans. Strength 12, Dex 9, Con 12. Trollborn are kind of like half-orcs in second edition. A crusader. You could be a dwarf and be a crusader. Human, dwarf, and elf could be crusaders. Gladiators. Gladiators are open to all, but you need strength 13, dex 12, con 15. Neanderthals were first edition? I think they used that in first edition or very early and then got away from it because they're like, maybe not. Runecaster, human or trollborn? Was that flammable and were they flammable and regenerating, or just really ugly? Trying to remember. Trollborn. Trollborn are half human, half troll. Trolls in the Viking campaign setting are different than to the trolls found in the Monsters Compendium. Oh, Neanderthals are also in 3.5, yeah. Yeah, so trolls are part of the Viking set. Viking source book. Okay, that makes sense. Warlocks. The only requirement to be a warlock is an intelligence of 9. And you could have any species, or depends on specialization, right? Like, you could Warlock Witch specialties. At the character creation, the Warlock Witch can choose either to be a generalist or a specialist. These follow the same rules as generalist wizards, mages, or specialist wizards. Each specialty is different racial or ability score requirements. Wow. Oh yeah, and I have to admit, the second edition way pacts were written, so much more in depth, right? Like, Pact of Service. Each time a warlock or witch spends spell points to cast a spell, they risk attracting the attention of a chaotic or evil power. The character has a percentage chance equal to the number of spell points expended, minus their character level, of being forced to take a step into the Pact of Service with malevolent power. It's just like, wow. Ah, yes. The never-ending attempt to bring in psionics. Well, psionics are great. Um, I mean, I was surprised it's not a cap of 9. I mean, really, it shouldn't be considered a bright life path for warlocks, true. But yeah, the whole thing about enticement, invitation, touch of darkness, the embrace, creature of darkness, and resisting, how do you resist a descent? Can you survive your saving throws? All of that kind of stuff. I mean, like, and it becomes much more obvious when you look at, like, 5th edition. And one of the most glaring things to me about 5th edition is how many subclasses they're creating of each class to remove effectively class specialization, right? Like, if you can do things in 5th edition as, like a trickery cleric, or like, what's the word? What am I looking for? A couple of these subclasses where it really is just, you don't want to force people to be like, well, we don't have a cleric in the party, so you can take healing abilities as a monk, right? Like, okay, that explain it to me, but sure. Or you don't want to have specializations anymore. You just want to be able to say, like, yes, I am XYZ and I can do anything. And it's like, but I like limitations. It makes things replayable when there are limitations. Yeah, Rose says it best. They're trying to make sure everyone has access to all the awesome. All of it, to the point of blandification. Exactly. And it really does become like, okay. Not a lot of what Koldrick says, when I started, and for many years, I was always a cleric. Battlefield medic more than holy tank. I mean, I like playing either battlefield medic or holy tank. My Shadowkai cleric that I played last night, that is definitely a holy tank. She had a big pointy stick, and her holy symbol was literally the pike. She had inlaid into the blade of the pike the holy, like a gold inlay for the holy symbol of Kelemvor on the pike. And it's like, hey Crit, welcome in. We're talking about things that I'm planning to do, which involve Greyhawk. And I'm going to run a Greyhawk campaign. Ro says, and when everyone has magic, being a really good fighter loses much of its value. Yeah, exactly. It's like, there's... Some of the best things that you can do in D&D are just play a straightforward fighter. Straightforward fighter, barbarian, monk. But a true, like, battle master or champion fighter should be something that people embrace. And the problem becomes that the way 5th edition is done, when you get to those higher levels, there's no... It becomes very, very... I mean, like, high-level mages back in the day were serious glass cannons, right? Like, you got above level 8 as a mage in 2nd edition or 1st edition, everyone around you, you know, it's great. For no one around you. Trying to remember. Elminster was only like a level 11 or 13. I think so. I think Elminster's character sheet... He basically amounts to like a level 13 wizard. Mage, excuse me. Hawkeye says, one of the reasons I lean towards paladins a lot is to get to have fight and have enough cleric healing to get by. I mean, yeah, that's also fun. Lysander says, I remember diving through a wiki about Greyhawk a while ago, found out that some of the players that playtested the setting had their characters become part of the Pantheon, including an isekai cowboy. Yes! Like, full on, Greyhawk has some of the weirdest lore, right? And you're like, what? So, all of those mages that we name spells after are all Greyhawk mages. Elminster, Tensor, from Tensor's Floating Disc, and, dude, asshole. Mordenkainen. Sorry. Are, like, there's a whole thing about the, oh, what are they called? The, Ring of Eight, is that? I'm trying to remember. Anyways, Volo is purely Faerun. Volo doesn't exist anywhere else. Melf, there we go. So there's the Greyhawk. Yeah, it's the because there's a second edition whole adventure called The Return of the Eight. And because the Circle of Eight, that's what I was looking for. Circle of Eight. Oh, come on. Okay, so Circle of Eight was founded in 571 CY by Mordenkainen from the remnants of the Citadel of Eight. Among the group's original members were former Citadel member Bigby. So Mordenkainen, Bigby, Bucknard, Dromage, Leomund from Leomund's Tiny Hut, Nystel, Otto, and Rory. And then the Citadel of Eight was formed earlier. Was Mordenkainen and Bigby is Mordenkainen's apprentice. Robilar, Rigby, Yarg, Tensor, Seriton, and Otis. All of the Melf is not a member of the Circle of Eight, but he's one of the wizards that is there. So you're like, okay, all of these people that get named in spells that are used across Faerun, and except for Elminster, none of them are from Faerun. And Tasha Sidious Laughter, she's from Fistolandius is Fistolandius is an entirely separate genre. He's over there in Dragonlance, and Fistolandius has his own issues. Most of them involving the possibility of Fistolandius really being into dragon fucking. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it. So you get this dichotomy of really high level magic or spells that in 5th edition people don't even think about taking, because it's like Tensor's Floating Disc, Leomund's Tiny Hut. They're like all of these other things, and they're like, maybe Mordenkainen's Magnificent Mansion when I get there, but it's not really important. I'll take Fireball instead. Or I'll take these other just damage spells, because that's all you do in 5th edition, right? You only need damage spells. Versus, hey, if you're playing in 2nd edition, you need Leomund's Tiny Hut. You need some way to protect yourself while you are on an adventure, because you could die, right? Like, there is, who is taking watch? All of these things kind of become very important. And yeah, resting and recovery mattered. Versus now there are GMs and there are tables where rest and recovery matter in 5th edition, but the mechanics don't necessarily support that, right? Like, okay, so Tensor's Floating Disc. What is the actual Tensor's? Okay, Tensor's Floating Disc. The new rules. Let's look at the new versus the 2014 rules for Tensor's Floating Disc, okay? Nope. We'll come back to that. So Tensor's floating disk in the 2014 rules, duration is an hour. You have a range of 30 feet. It has verbal, somatic, and material components. This spell creates a circular horizontal plane of force 3 feet in diameter and 1 inch thick that floats 3 feet above the ground in an unoccupied space of your choice. You can see within range. The disc remains for the duration and can hold up to 500 pounds. If more weight is placed on it, the disc spell ends and everything on the disc falls to the ground. The disc is immobile when you're within 20 feet of it. If you move more than 20 feet away, the disc follows you, so it remains within 20 feet of you. It can move across uneven terrains, up or down stairs, slopes, and the like, but it can't cross an elevation change of 10 feet or more. For example, the disc can't move across a 10-foot deep pit, nor could it leave such a pit if it was created at the bottom. If you move more than 100 feet from the disc, typically because it can't move around an obstacle to follow you, the spell ends. Okay, so the duration is an hour. It's 3 feet in diameter and 1 inch thick. It is also an action, and you can do it as a ritual, and it's conjuration. New rules. Still an hour, still first level, still an action, ritual, conjuration. Horizontal plane, 3 feet in diameter, 1 inch thick, same. 500 pounds, same. Now, literally the rules are the same. So, Tensors is the same. It holds up to 500 pounds. You just have to stack it correctly on 3 feet diameter. I think part of it was because the setting was based off the various weird fantasy that was back then, where the main characters could die really easily. Yes, I support this. Have more death. But that's me. You need to talk with your table about it before you do so. You know. I want to see, and that's why I'm setting up a game of Greyhawk. I want to see how the mechanics of the new 2024 edition play with Greyhawk. How do this much more, like, I was literally looking at this. So Nyleth, love her. Okay, she as spells. Cure Wounds is 2d8. Healing Word is 2d4 at level 1, and then they go up by 2d8 or 2d4. What was the other one that I saw? Oh, Aura Vitality is 2d6. Mass Healing Word is 2d4 plus 3, whatever. So it's lots of interesting things that I think would be, I don't know how it plays. Because again, the setting in Greyhawk assumes a level of danger that I don't think mechanically exists in 5th or 2024 edition anymore. And I think it would be very interesting to see how that plays out. Now I'm probably not going to play with a lot of the meta plot. I'm not going to get into, whatever, who did what, where, when, why. I'm going to focus on just mechanics and setting, because look at this. Look at this world, right? Like, all of the pretty that is all of this. Kingdoms, political, and that's the other thing is, like, Greyhawk assumes a level of, there is the free city of Greyhawk, which, why am I blanking on where it is on the map? Where's the free city of Greyhawk on the map? So Greyhawk is the free city. It's a, it's like an independent territory. It's Eastern Orlith. Oh, poopies, where is it? I used to be able to do this really easy. Snow Barbarians. Okay, so eastern bank of the river. Which one? Y'all. Where is it? Harp. Why is it so hard to find what you want? Anyways. I'll find it later. Because now I'm in the level of like, if I try and find it, it's also I can't really read it on this map. On this. I need to make it better. But, okay. Okay. All right, Krog Keep is also exactly. Greyhawk was Baldur's Gate before Baldur's Gate got civilized. I mean, Baldur's Gate was never civilized. Well, I just came across the changes coming to D&D from Hasbro yesterday. Bonkers. I didn't see anything yesterday. Probably. Yeah, hex grid math. An atlas without an index. Yes. I wonder if the free city is located on the central part of the Flunas in the easternmost section of the continent, or yeah, and the problem is you have to find it on the map. Gray. Maps. Here we go. Here we go. It's always a where the are you on your own damn map kind of thing. Why can I not display it bigger? Why do you never let me look at a thing bigger? Where's Waldo? Exactly. Ugh, it's all pardoning of the online gambling deal. Oh, okay. Greyhawk. Okay. Here we go. Where are you? There we go. Haha. Found it. Finally. Okay. Actually, I'm just gonna do this. There we go. Here is the map of the eastern continent in the Flanus. Here is Greyhawk in the middle of this whole thing. And you're like, what? Where even? The city itself is... That's Gracemere. On the river road. 2 forward. Cross forward. Here. It's just like, there's the city. Then all the little towns down here. Great Rock. Whatever. But this is just half of a continent, right? Like, that's it. This is, but there's so much more to this world. It's great. Yeah, exactly. Lots of places to have an event. Yeah, exactly. Like, I play a lot of other systems now. Oh yeah, here's the city of Greyhawk. It's like, where on the river road is it? It's like, you always think it's down here, but nope, it's up here. It's all the way up here. Ruins of Rollerball Keep, there you go. Blackstone. Tensor's Castle. Speaking of. Free City of Divers. You know, Falcon's Den, Slayer's Cove. All of these kind of fun things. No, so Castle Greyhawk is in the city. Castle Greyhawk is across the river from the city. So the city is here, and the castle is here. It's a defensive port across the river. Is it sitting on the floating disc? Canonically, it's portions of it are floating, but I'm trying to remember if the whole tower castle floats. No, this is Anna B. Myers. This is Anna B. Myers. This is hers. This is literally the massive thing that she has made of it. And this is just the Flanus. This is Anna B. Myers' Flanus. And I'm going to share the link in chat so that everyone can go look at the awesomeness that they did. But yeah. I also love the fact that you could do so much in this world. Like, there's a whole other continent over here, and there's a whole other continent down here. It's massive. They are doing lots of good things. The near div. I mean, like, and there's a lot you can have, fun you can have in this world. Now, there is some bioessentialism and some not so great depictions of evil species that I would probably tweak because I can, and it's my game, and I don't want to have that. But it's also kind of like, obviously a holdover from earlier editions and earlier what's the word I look? Yeah. So Anna B. Mayer has been mapping the Flanus for nearly 25 years. Congratulations to her. She is literally the queen of maps. There you go. Have fun with her. But she... Anyways, going back to the other point I was trying to think about is I'm going to run this campaign. I have a bunch of people I have to talk to, planning, and all of that. But what I'm doing is I'm taking 2 of the previously second edition adventures that were published for Greyhawk, adapting those, combining them, changing them, playing with the story, but some of the elements in them are definitely going to stay because they're some of my favorite adventures. And no, it's not Tomb of Horrors. That's too easy. And combining them in new ways, and then throwing that into a current edition game and seeing what happens. Right? Like, seeing where the actual what's the word I'm looking for? How the game plays, how the world, mechanics and the world interact, and what comes out of it. And seeing if, because it's very easy for Wizards of the Coast to just say, hey, we have the rights to Greyhawk, we're going to publish a bunch of new Greyhawk stuff, keep the rights moving, go from there. But it can be very hard to take those same kind of pre-existing worlds and without making any changes, publish them for the new edition. And I have questions and I want to see. But it's me, so it's not just going to be simple. I never do anything simply. The blandification will mark on. Yeah. I have, it's like, how do you identify or change? And like, I mean, it worked. And I think that one of the other things that's kind of there in the world out there is, we all know that for Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast is a moneymaker. And we all know that they are looking to milk as much money out of it as they can. And that's probably why they're bringing back Greyhawk, because they're like, oh, look, there's this thing, we can make a lot of money on it, we should publish it and make a lot of money on it. That doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it works. And for me, as a form of media, tabletop RPGs as a form of media are where mechanics and story overlap and twist to create something new. So you have story and the mechanics, both of which need to work together. And in this case, the question for that part of the story is, does the setting work with those mechanics? We shall see. I think the rise of Greyhawk will be very interesting, because with the rise of Greyhawk, there'll be a large number of people playing in Greyhawk, and then you'll have a bunch of people go like, well, I saw this epic build online, and I want to play this kind of character, and people will be like, well, you can't, because those species don't exist in Greyhawk. And players will get upset, is what I think is going to be the biggest thing that's going to come out of this. But what do I know? I am just a lone voice on the internet. Yeah, I agree with you, Ro. Mechanics give the world structure and increase immersion for me. At least that's what I want from them. I mean, that's why I love our Tolstorian games and the way in which they really thought out how the mechanics are going to play in Cyberpunk, or how those are change. Excuse me. how the mechanics are going to interact in Witcher with the world of Witcher. How are they going to mechanics going to interact with Cyberpunk in the world of Cyberpunk? You know, how does the change of mechanics function when you get to Mechton? Yes, by the way, Mechton exists. It is a game. Go play it. Actually, you know what? You can watch. I've run multiple short campaigns of Mechton, Starblade Battalion, and Corporate Raiders, and Starblade Memories. Just saying. There's plenty of games out there. Thank you, Lysander. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you thought they were awesome campaigns. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of. I'm thinking I've got the other high level projects that I'm working on. At the moment, are kind of have to pause because I need particular players for certain of those high level projects, and they're not available yet, so I gotta wait those. So I'm gonna do Greyhawk, and we're gonna go from there. But it will be interesting. I have a bunch of people I want to ask to come play in Greyhawk. About to turn into a pumpkin. Had fun though. Stay out. Thank you, Ro. I'm actually probably going to crash too. It is midnight here on the East Coast. And it is time for me to get some sleep. I will be back tomorrow. Probably doing some low-key gaming and chatting. I kindly have received a bunch of video games for Christmas that, like, I'm just saying, I have new things in my library that I was given and that might be fun to play. I'm just saying. Just saying. Have some new things. So we might see about that. And Monday, y'all, Monday night, 8 p.m., right here, I and Trooper are gonna have a colloquium. It's been a minute. It's been a hot minute since Trooper and I, just had time to talk and have fun and share all of those talks with you. So Monday night colloquium here. If we make mechanics work, we might co-stream, but that's a question we will have to see about when TED Talks collide. I mean, we're better than TED Talks. We're fancier than TED Talks. But But other than that, I think that's what we're gonna call it for the night, everybody. I'm tired. It's late. It is late. So, thank you for hanging out. Thank you for chatting with me about books. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to read next week because I don't know yet. That's the answer. And I will see you tomorrow night for some video gaming and chatting and seeing where life goes. If you want to kind of hang out or see more fun times, you can also check out the merch store. By the way, there will be a new piece of merch. I have just finished designing it. It needs to go up I reactivated some things because I think that given the current things that are happening in January, that people might want a mug that say Vampires for Nixon. For no reason in particular. That these individuals might want that. Just saying that those are now back for a limited edition for January. I feel... So those are going to be special edition for January. There will be new merch coming tomorrow. Yeah, gonna leave that alone. None. Absolutely no reason whatsoever. I'm just gonna say that it exists. You can even get stickers of that. Vampires for Nixon merch exists. But I'm going to let you all go. Thank you all for hanging out with me. It was a great night, and I will see you tomorrow, maybe. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.